Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Your Business podcast. And I'm so excited today to be chatting with Crystal Shadwell, who is an educator, speaker, and podcaster dedicated to empowering women to reconnect with themselves beyond the demands of motherhood. She is a co host of the Team Crew podcast and co founder of Something Beyond Mom, a vibrant community where moms can find space to thrive outside of their parenting roles. Crystal inspires women to embrace the idea that it's not only possible to be a loving mom, but also live a fulfilling, multidimensional life without the mom guilt. Amen to that. Hello, Crystal. Good. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Amy. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy. So I know, have met at the High Vibe Women event. I'm trying to think. There was one of the events we had met at. I think it was like a content day, and then we shared the retreat, which I'm sure we'll get into as well. But you have a very interesting journey because you started and still are working in your corporate job and attended a High Vibe Women event. Why don't you tell some of our listeners kind of how that all transpired? Because you went into the event not an entrepreneur and left as an entrepreneur. So I think that's so amazing.
Yeah. So like you say, so wonderful that we've connected at all these super cool spaces, such empowering places that we've been in. And I went to High Vibe Women, I guess not this past January, but the January before, to support a friend who owned her own business, who I was like, you need to be in this room. Another friend of mine had mentioned it to me because she's like, I know you love speaking and being on stages and you're really good at that. And I was looking for more opportunities to take that outside of my corporate job. So she had shared High Vibe with me, and I was like, well, I'm not an entrepreneur, so that doesn't make sense. But I was like, hey, like my friend here, Tat, has this amazing home aesthetic studio. So I was like, let's go, let's see what this thing's all about. And then was just so lit up and so inspired, just sitting in the room as someone working a corporate job. That the next day at a play date, I was still just like buzzing and like filled with all this inspiration. And I had always had this itch of like, I know the impact that I have on campus. I can have that beyond campus too. And I had always, everyone in my world had said that to me. I had had that feeling. So I was like, this is the year I'm going to do it. And I was sharing that with a friend. And she was like, you know what? Like, I've always wanted to build something. And I think you'd be the perfect partner for it. And to, let's jump into this together and create this, community for moms. So I was like, okay, like, no idea what that means. Not a business owner, had been working and still working in the field of education for 15 years. So I was like, let's jump in and see what it looks like. And then, yeah, the rest, I guess, the last year and a half has been trying to learn this world of business ownership.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so amazing too that you had that nudge and you still were like buzzing. Like that's just, I think, part of the entrepreneurial spirit of like, I have this idea, let's actually act on it. Cause I think a lot of times people in the corporate world have an idea and they don't act on it. They kind of just sit, or the stories they tell themselves or play small. And the fact that you're like, no, I know that I meant for more and I can have both. And you're proving that right now, which is amazing too.
Thank you. And it definitely took a long time, right? Like I think my husband, like in our 8 years of our life together, has been saying it. Even like my mother-in-law from the first time she met me, right? Friends who have known me, they've always been like,
Yeah.
Crystal, like you are meant for more. And it did take a long time for me to get out of my own way. And it did take a long time to be like, why we, you look to these people and they're 10 steps ahead of you, years down this path of owning their own businesses. And it definitely was tricky at first for me to be like, what, how could I ever do that? I'm very established here. I have a great job in the higher education space, but it took a while. I think when I found the right niche area to work with, that was then when it like clicked for me. So it wasn't until becoming a mom, like I was always like, I know I want to
Yeah.
help women. I know that I have like great, like built good relationships with students. Like I know that like I'm a mentor in so many different spaces. I'm always kind of naturally gravitating to those kind of roles. But it was always like, who are the women that I want to help? And like, who are the people that I actually think I can help that I feel like maybe I have something, some experience or some, um, yeah, expertise that I could share. And then I think it was finally kind of like the perfect moment where I was like, okay, like a mom is the hardest job I've ever had. These are the
Yes.
people that I need to help. And then it was like the perfect storm of like the inspiration, everything, and then being like, okay, moms are who I want to help because yeah, this is the hardest gig I've had. So let's
Absolutely. And you bring up such a good point. And even like being a mom as an entrepreneur can be
Mhm.
like so challenging because you're trying to juggle it all. And for you, like, how do you manage juggling like full-time job, mom, business on the side, plus you have a podcast? Like, how do you manage to like juggle it all? Because you talk about like guilt-free. And I think as
Mhm.
moms, like that's one of the biggest things we tend to have a lot of times is guilt because I'm going to this event and I'm not spending time with my family, right? So like how do you manage that?
I definitely, I sometimes have to check myself because sometimes I pour myself a little too thin.
Yeah.
Um, but I really try to remember like when I am taking time away from being a mom by doing these things that fill me up, like I come back as a better mom. So sometimes by like taking the time to step
Yes.
away to like remind myself who I am, like I'm not just a mom, right? Like I
Yes.
am a multidimensional woman who has all these different passions and things that I can contribute. So if I'm just like when I was on mat leave, I was so not miserable, but right, the monotony of it, like
Yep.
nap time schedules and the scheduling baby play dates. Like I was like, my brain
You're
needs,
living around like naps, feeding, and play dates
yeah,
basically is your world like that whole
yeah,
time. Yeah.
that hamster wheel. So then when I went back to work, I was like, okay, I'm a happier mom as a working mom.
Yep.
And that feels good. So like that, like right, like knowing that identity, like I felt strong in that identity. And then same thing when I started building spaces for moms to come hang out with other moms and to leave our kids at home, it was very much like, okay, it's going to be hard to leave and they're going to be upset. But by taking those 2 hours for yourself, you're going to be so much better when you go back to them. So I think that's the thing when that's how I manage the mom guilt. Like I really try to remember what it's going to feel like on the other side of it. And then with all these different, roles that I play, I think when I try to stack them all on top of each other too much,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Crystal, have you maybe committed a little bit too much? We both know human design well. Like I very much am the epitome of a Manny Gen. Like I have 101 things going on at all times.
Yeah.
But I do try to keep it like I still want to have energy to give back to my family. So I can't let it suck up every ounce of my energy, but it does fill me up in a way that I get to come back to them better.
Yes, and you just as you're speaking there talking about like the end result when you do go to these events, it just made me think too like as your son grows older and I know with like even with like my oldest daughter right now, like we're living examples for them. Right?
Yeah.
So like when we went to the event in Guelph, she happened to be like at a hockey tournament that same weekend and so she was asking me, what are you doing? So I was explaining him it's so cool. I'm going to a room of like there's 150 women in this room and they're all women in business and they're all trying to like, be better and do better. And she's like, maybe I'll meet a friend there. Like it's just so funny, like the things that like the impact not only for yourself and your family, but like the example that you're leaving for your son that like if he one day wants to do something that, mom did it and made time for herself and to do the things that she really loved too.
Totally, right? And like I'm so thankful for the way that my parents raised me. Like I'm very much an only child who like they poured into everything. Like my dad coached my baseball for 20 years. My mom took on the convener of every league that I was a part of. But really like I was everything.
Yeah.
And like now they have a good social life now. And it's funny, like all of their social life revolves around parents that they met when I was playing like elite level sports.
Yeah.
But I would like to like, right, like I don't want to just that be all that it is. Like, right, like I don't want
Yes.
my identity to only be formed around his. Like, so I
Yep.
think that I would like that he looks at like, oh yeah, like mom and dad have things they care about that they're excited about. And they still give everything to me, but they have these other parts of their life.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And so you also have the Team Crew podcast. So, and that you co-host with your husband. So let's chat a bit more about that. So when did you start that podcast and what kind of inspired you and your husband to start it?
My husband and I have always said that we should do something together. Like we're very much like very opposites attract, as everyone says, but
Yeah.
also like our skill sets are so complementary. Like when we were planning our wedding, every vendor that we worked with, they were like, you guys should just like start a business. Like you're
In
so
sync with
organized.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, like it really was. So we've always had that feeling of like we should do something. And then same thing, getting into parenthood, we were like, okay, like, again, Cole's taking up everything that we are, and all we're focusing on is him. So as both it was interesting like going into parenthood and then both of our corporate jobs advancing and progressing, we weren't necessarily tapping into some of the skills that really like light us up, right? Like we're both
Yep.
moving into more like senior level leadership positions, so like we're not on the ground doing the work in the same way. So like my husband used to
Yep.
produce music for movies, so
Oh,
he has like no
cool.
time or space for that anymore. I, as I mentioned, like love standing on stages, love talking, love
Yeah.
presenting. But and I used to teach here on campus, but I'm teaching less now that I'm moving into more of a leadership position. So we're like, okay, how can we use those skills that again, we have these complementary things, and then in parenthood, we realized like we're both such open books. Like people always come to us with like whether it's asking for advice or just liking, like we like to like normalize things. We're not afraid to share kind of what's working, what's not working, what
Yep.
we're going through. So like we're having all these conversations anyways. So all of those kind of things came together. And then we're like, you know what? It would be nice to spend a few hours a week together doing something together, having like a passion project. It's
Yeah.
not just, even though it's not about Cole, like it is indirectly because we talk about parenting a lot. We
Yeah.
talk about him a lot, but like this would be fun, right? Like it gives us a creative project. It gives us something that we're working on that's not just again nap time schedules and is Cole eating and what's
Yep. And
um
extracurricular activities and all the things, right?
exactly. So it kind of gave us like a little bit of like a passion project together. And then as it was like, yeah, then it kind of grew and we got like a good little listenership following along and wanting again to like, I think we like to create that space of normalizing. And we
Yes.
said, we said at the beginning, if our moms are the only people that listen, so be it. We did it. But now we're coming up to this June will be 1 year of the podcast.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. Congrats.
thank you. So yeah, yeah, it's like our other little baby.
Yeah, and I think it's like I love how you talk about something you guys do together, but it's also something fun, right? And if
Mhm.
you're having these conversations, you're right, you're really normalizing it for people that you're like, "Oh, if they're having these conversations, then like it's okay for us to have these like I had this thought too and maybe now this you're sparking that inspiration for them to be able to go have that conversation with their spouse that maybe they were scared to have, right?"
Yeah, because it's all about like relationship. It's all about like kind of the roles we play, right? So like
Yep.
in relationship, in parenthood, in like I love that there's people who like don't have kids but still really like take things out of it and listen to be like, okay, this might be something that one day I deal with. Or even people who don't want to have kids are like, yeah, when you talk about that kind of relationship and how you're managing, maybe it's a conflict around something that has to do with Cole, but it still relates to
Yeah.
us in that way. We've definitely really appreciated that feedback from our listeners.
Yeah, and even just having that different perspective too of you guys, like I'm sure there's been times or has there been times when you guys have been having like conversations on where you're like something you don't agree with that you've kind of like worked through together? Because I would imagine having like a spouse on, we know our trigger points sometimes, right? So you're like, oh, why did you say that?
Oh yeah, we definitely don't agree often. And that's again, because we're such opposites, right? Like we're
Yeah.
definitely not bringing the same perspective on a lot of these things. Like and we like to like back it up with research. We bring experts onto
Yep.
our podcast. Like it's not just we like kind of every other episode is just the two of us, but
Yeah.
we like to like bring in another voice to the conversation as well because yes, often here and I are not. There's no better test of your relationship, right? Than like some of these things. So we air that out on air
Yeah.
often. Yeah.
Oh, very true. So, I know you've had like your mom on the podcast, you've had his mom on the podcast. So, do you have like a favorite podcast episode then?
Good question. Well, definitely. So actually, the event that you and I met at was the collab party, and
Yes.
we had to voice like our dream collab. And at that event, I said, like, there's these two girls in Australia who have this motherhood podcast that I love so much. Like, my dream collab was like one day connecting with them, and they were recently on our podcast, which was like unbelievable.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. So like then we became this like international podcast, which was pretty cool.
Yes,
To
very
get it to their
cool.
listeners too. So that was cool. Like I definitely felt like a little bit mini famous in that moment because they are like, I think they're like in the top 5 podcasts in all of Australia. Um,
That's amazing.
yeah, so that one was really cool. Their podcast is called How Motherhood Changed Me, and it was just like it just speaks so much to like you're never like ever going to be the same person again afterwards. And we tried to talk about like how like there's the things you expect, but also the things you can never expect. So that was cool. So that was like a really big like wow fangirl moment. I had a very unique situation last year where I got to meet the federal minister of family, children, and social development as well. Um, so in this time of year, it's an interesting one
Yeah.
to talk about politics.
Yes.
But it was so cool because like she reached out to me and I really didn't know what it was going to be all about when her press secretary reached out to me. But we got to have a very genuine conversation with her, like truly like mom to mom, not
Yeah.
about politics. Like it was really about parenting. Um, and she was very interested to like have a real conversation like about kind of the state of how things are as parents right now. So that was another one where I was like, wow, like if you would have asked me where would I hope the podcast could get to in like, 5 years, I would have
Yeah.
said, I would love to think that we can actually be talking to people who are making decisions that actually impact things. Um,
Yes.
so to get to sit down and have a chat with her as well, was pretty surreal. So we've had some moments definitely. And all the high vibe girls, there's so many of them, which is
Yes.
so cool. But yeah, I definitely had some pinch me moments where I'm like, this podcast is a real thing.
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, congratulations. For our listeners though, you shared that at the collab event, you had your dream collab, dream partnership. So I know a lot of times people like say this, but you actually took action on it. So like, can you share maybe like, what are some things that you did? Because I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're like, I want this, but the how, and we get stuck in the weeds of like how to bring that to life kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think just showing up is a huge thing in entrepreneurship. So I'm realizing that, right? As an entrepreneur, like you have to like put yourself in the spaces, right? Like to be like surrounding yourself with these people that are doing what you want and who
Yeah.
are, embodying that. And a big thing I've learned, like with like especially with social media, again, is like by just like being consistent and showing up and like being in the space and being social with it.
Hmm.
So for a long time, social media to me was like so burdensome and overwhelming. And I was like, I'm not a content creator. I don't know. So when I started just thinking of like, this is how I can be social because I am chatty, and like commenting and like engaging with other people's content. So I really just started engaging with their content. And then they commented on something of mine back. And I was like, whoa, they know I
Whoa.
exist. And I was like, this is
Yes.
unbelievable. So when they commented back on mine, I DM'd them and I was just like, hey, like just huge fangirl moment. Like, I love you guys. Like, I think your podcast is wonderful. And we started talking and just DMing kind of again, like mom to mom and
Yep.
talking about all of this stuff that we're going through. And then, yeah, I shot my shot. And I was like, I'd love to do a pod swap with you guys. Like, just, we both have these podcasts and they were so excited about it. They had never been on a podcast. So to them, they were like, whoa, like, this
So
is
cool. Yeah.
cool.
Well, and you
So
bring up a good point because you never realize like you sometimes we build those stories again kind of in our head, but the fact that like they've never no one's asked them. They've never had that opportunity. So now you've maybe just created like a new thing for them to be able to like do more podcast swaps to like help expand their reach and their messaging out to the world too.
exactly. Yeah. So, and it was that's the thing, right? Like exactly like you said, we build up these people who we think they have it all figured out. They're so far ahead of us, but you never know where they're actually sitting. So, but yeah, by just being social on social media, it really paid off.
It makes a
Um,
difference. Yep.
so yeah, and that was the same thing like with the federal minister, same thing. They found me because of like some, simple content that I, created and they reached out and started talking. So yeah, I think by just actually engaging in the space as a way to make connections, it really did pay off.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Mhm.
So, speaking is one of the things that you love to do that you shared. And so exciting. I had the privilege of seeing you lead the Health is Wealth panel at the High Vibe Women event this past March. And so, for our listeners, can you share like a little bit about what that experience was like? Because I know you prepared and like you just poured your heart and soul into that. So, yeah, we'd love to hear more for them.
Mhm. It's so interesting, right? Like I say, I've been teaching on campus for years. I like put me in front of 1,000 people here on campus and I don't bat an eye. But then when you find yourself surrounded by your peers, it's a very
Yeah.
different space, right? Like it's like you're like, yeah, it's nerve-wracking in a totally different way. So I really wanted to be prepared for that because again, we do, right? Like I'm sitting at these tables at High Vibe, like I'm sitting next to someone who owns like a multi-million dollar candle company. And then I'm sitting next to someone who owns like three seven-figure businesses. So I was definitely like knowing I was going to feel a little bit of imposter syndrome in that space because I'm like, my business is just starting to take off. And I like, we know I only created this business a year ago. So I really wanted to feel well prepared because I knew that I was going to feel like a little bit of fish out of water. But when it came to the topic, I was like, no, this is who I am. This is what I live. This is what I breathe. And when I'm realizing again that if we're not taking care of ourselves, like we can do all the things to take care of our businesses, but
Hmm.
if we're not taking care of ourselves as the business owner, none of that is fruitful. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, so when I think I like trusted that I'm like, I do have something to bring to this conversation. And I was so excited to be out there with three other wonderful women who also are experts in that space. And trusted that I was asked for a reason. And
Yes.
right, like there was a reason that Christina and Maria like trusted that I could be the one to facilitate that conversation, regardless of how big my business is or how long it's existed. Like it wasn't about that.
No, it
Um,
was about you as the person and yes, what you had to offer. Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, so I think just kind of managing through that and then wanting to be prepared. It's really hard to prepare for a panel as opposed to a keynote because a
Right.
keynote you're fully in charge of the conversation versus a panel you have no idea what's going to happen on the other side. And I knew like Bridget's a firecracker and has a lot
Yeah.
to say, and I knew that Maria was like right, like getting so much more confident in her public speaking, but we were gonna have to pull things out of her and
Yeah.
seem scary. So it was definitely tricky to truly prepare. Like as much as I poured so much into it and thought into it, it was like at the end of the day, what they say is going to really dictate where we go with this. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience. And the day, like, so it was a 2 day event, as you know.
Yeah.
Um, and there was the first on my panel was on the second day. There was another panel on the first day, and Christina hosted that panel and stood up there and spoke for like right 3 to 5 minutes beforehand. And I was like, oh, like I didn't think that was
Is
going
that
to
a thing?
I was like, so I figured I would have like 30 to 60 seconds to do my little intro and then turn it over to the panelists. But I was like, well, if she did that, I kind of want to do that too. So then
Yeah.
all day Saturday, I'm like, okay, I need to like practice and prep a little bit more to kind of get a little bit more before we actually start this thing. So even though all the prep and all of the preparation I got into it, it still was like 24 hours before we actually took the stage that things came together. But it was wonderful and like so great to be able to, be in that room, but also, yeah, having just come in that room for the first time just over a year ago to then be on the stage a year later was a really surreal and humbling, but like really wonderful experience.
Yes, and just you killed it. You did such an amazing job. And I think that just speaks again to the passion and the belief in yourself and to keep going. Even sometimes, I know you said you were sitting beside like someone that owns multiple businesses, someone who's like, 7-figure business, like everyone belongs in that room. And it's like you bring up a good point too, like just remembering like where we all started somewhere. So the fact
Yeah.
that like a year ago, there was people that I think just started their business like 3 weeks ago. So, they're in the same predicament that you were a year ago, right? So
Yeah.
it's just amazing and such an accomplishment to show people that like keep going. Things can transpire before you even realize it.
Yeah, so fast, so much can change, right? And like you say, we all belong in that room. And that was the cool thing. And that like the space is always so wonderful in there because we're all just pouring into each other so much. But
Yeah.
right? I was sitting at the VIP table feeling very small, but then like walking around at the reception, people coming up to me being like, "Oh my God, Crystal, like I love your business and I listen to your podcast," and or like connecting with people and then being like, "Oh, I already follow you on Instagram." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. What? I know those are always such like amazing experiences because you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize. And then, yeah, no, it's so powerful being in that room.
Yeah.
So for, the moms that are listening, I know I have a lot of mom listeners as well too. So for anyone who's kind of feeling like lost in their day-to-day self kind of thing, maybe do you have any like tips or some suggestions on things that they can do to kind of like help find themselves again?
Mhm. I think it really is about like thinking about those pieces of yourself that whether they were things you did before, that you want to return to, right? Like what I always say, like what's one thing? It's like, right, I think it gets very overwhelming when you feel like it has to be like a big to do. Like,
Yeah.
is there 1 hour a week that you can carve out that's like just for you, right?
Yeah.
That's like not about work, not about mom, not about spouse, not about any of those things, like that is truly just for you. And like, what does that look like? I
Yeah.
think reconnecting with that so that you have something that is truly like just for you and like off ideally out of the house as well,
Yes, that's a good
right?
point too. Yeah.
Even though it's hard, right? Like like my first few months, like even just like getting my nails done, it was so like frivolous, but it like just felt good, right? Like it was
Yeah.
like a little bit of time pouring into myself. And then after that, it was like, okay, I want to like sign up for this boot camp class because I know once a week I have this thing that it's just about me. It's me taking care of myself, right? Like I'm forming a
Yeah.
community there. To have like that once a week to look forward to, right? So like I think just taking like those little steps. I know for like some moms, like even in the very early stages, is it just like, yeah, going for a walk out of the house, like, right?
Yes.
Self,
Yeah. And
right?
especially
So
with
like
spring and summer coming, like it's, yeah, perfect
it's
time.
doable, right? So
Yes.
yeah. So I think that would be my recommendations. Like, what is something that you can and like that again you can do, hopefully guilt free, and like you're not rushing home from that. You're like, I can feel good about this. My husband and I set up a really good system that helped. Like every Saturday morning, I have 3 to 4 hours on Saturday morning where I know, like Matthew is with Cole. I don't care what they're doing. I don't have to think about it, and I can do whatever I want in that space. Like I'm
Yeah.
not rushing back. I'm not, right? Like if I want to just stay home and do something, that can be what it is. If I want to go be a part of a bigger event, that can be what it is, right? Like, and then every Sunday morning Matthew gets that too. So like
Yeah.
we like had those like times like carved out where we could do that. Like for us, Saturday and Sunday mornings work because of the kind of jobs that we work, right?
Yep.
Is it need to be a Wednesday night or what does that look like, right?
Right.
So I think trying to like have that time where you can, again, hopefully guilt free, just say, like, this is a time for me and my family's going to be okay and they're going to be better. I'm going to be better. We're all going to be better for it when I get back. I think trying to find those things can start helping you reconnect with yourself
Yeah.
and start to like carve out that identity a little bit that is not just mom and
Yeah.
like put on a pair of jeans or a shirt that
Yeah.
makes you feel good or a
Yes.
little bit of makeup. Like it's interesting. My mom talked about that when she came on the podcast, right? By just like and her time putting on black eyeliner made her feel like a new woman again, right?
Yes, it's true. Like just even like simple things like washing your face, but even like you're pouring that into yourself, just it elevates your energy and how you feel about yourself too.
Exactly. So
Yeah. And you also bring up a good point because you share about how like going to the gym. So like you're really good at immersing yourself in like communities. And I feel like communities brings that like accountability piece as well too. Because if you're going to
true.
the gym and then you're not there, people are like, they they care about you. They're concerned about you. You've developed relationships with them, right? So I think that's again another really good point of like having relationships, kind of like you're saying, outside of the house, outside of work, outside of entrepreneurship, outside of it all. Like that's just for you too.
Yeah. And then you do, right, to build up those people because like you want to see them, but like you say, they care about you, right? There's another level of investment there. There's another level of accountability to it when you're not just like, I'm still doing a lot of basement workouts. It's very easy
Yeah.
to like, who am I accountable to other than right, like my basement TV.
Yep.
Um, I have like a little Facebook group that I'm a part of, and we call ourselves the 6 a.m. crew. And like even that, right? Like just by like sending in my sweaty selfie so that they know that
Yep.
I was down there at 6 a.m. Like it helps, right? Like how can you find these external I think that, and we know that in entrepreneurship space,
Yep.
in all these spaces, right? Like find your people because it makes such a big difference.
Absolutely. So I know we talked about you speaking, like health is
Oh,
your wealth, but like what other topics do you kind of love to like speak on as well too?
yeah. So like what I've always done here on campus is really talk about how life impacts learning. That's
Mm,
what my master's degree is on. That's what I teach here at Laurier, looking at kind of what's going on outside the classroom. And I've recently realized like that translates to everything. So like really kind of balancing this piece again, right? Of like kind of what is going on in your life that's impacting maybe the way you show up at work or like kind of like how you're able to engage like in your business, right? So like
yeah.
there like and that is like similar to health as well. But again, just like looking at these factors again that are going on outside of like what you're immersed in that
Yes.
playing a role. I think that's like something I love, love, love talking about in so many different ways. And having that awareness piece, like without bias. So I think sometimes like we judge ourselves so much and we think we have to be all these things. And I've always really loved teaching my students, but I love now having this conversation with mom too, right? Like we can't change something. So like how do we
Yeah.
have these pieces to the not feel bad about them, just like they are what they are. Like right now
Yeah.
you're in your mom era. So what does that mean? What's
Yeah.
possible, what's not possible? And building up that self-awareness. Um, and again, doing it guilt-free, right? It's not good, it's not
Yeah.
bad, it just is. So then what do we do
Yep.
about it, right? I think is something I love to be able to talk about a lot as well.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's being very like present and grounded in the season that you're in
Yeah,
as well too. So yeah, and
definitely.
I think those are things and great topics, especially with like entrepreneurship as well too, because I feel like it can be such a roller coaster of a ride that you can get lost in yourself or not take care of yourself and do, all the things that aren't always beneficial to us in like growing and sustaining a business as well too.
Very much so. Yeah. If you're just poor, that's the thing. If you're just giving it 100%, like, right, there's got to be other things that you need to pour into, right? Like you need to, you're a multifaceted individual again, right? So
Yes, definitely. And so, one last thing I kind of wanted to share too about how we both went on the Boss Mode Mom retreat, or was it Boss?
Boston retreats, yes.
Thank you. Yes, yes. So that was such like an amazing experience in connecting with all the other women there. And again, it goes to show, getting in the room and sharing the conversations and the support and the community that grows from that. And we did the cold plunge, and that was such like a profound experience, I think, because a lot of people hadn't had that, right? And I think, I'd love to hear kind of your perspective because, again, you're in a room asking questions with people who'd been in business for 20 years, and I think at that point you were like 9 months into business and you're trying to like, ground yourself in that. So I'd love for our listeners to kind of hear your experience around that too.
Yeah. Putting myself in that room, it was another one where there was all the imposter syndrome and all the self-doubt and all the like, right? Like, what do I have to contribute to this conversation? But the cold plunge really is like, I think what like woke me up, which was
Yes, lit
wonderful.
that fire. Oh, and even though like there was no fire, you know what I mean.
There was, yeah, there was like definitely the extremes, right?
Yes.
So I'm actually I'm doing an event called Mother Telling in May. And my mother
Cool.
telling story is around the cold plunge experience. Um,
Okay.
and how it woke me up. Because Jody was such a wonderful guide, right? And really
Yes.
like put us through this really transformative experience, reflecting and thinking about kind of where we're at and what we need. And I realized, I think I was holding so much like self-doubt, I was holding so much uncertainty in myself. But then by getting into this like whole place of vulnerability, like you just had to like release it, right? Like you just had to like,
And for our listeners, we cold plunged in the middle of winter. It was the middle of January in a snowstorm. It
literally
was
0 degrees.
freaking freezing. Yeah.
It really was like it was like an actual like
Yes.
legit winter. We were outside in the middle of the forest in like 0 degree water. It was like
Yes.
yes, there was no way not for that to be transformative.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think by like going into that place of vulnerability and really like the breath work that came before it, and then by doing the cold plunge and like having all this just release of like all this tension and all this like
Yes.
everything, like by just like needing to let it go. Um, the first day and a bit of the retreat, like I was like, maybe I'm meant to be here to tell me that I shouldn't be a business owner. Like maybe this is what this retreat's meant to show me. But then
Yeah.
leaving that, like being like, okay, like I am capable of doing this. I'm meant to be doing this. Like I need to keep doing it. There's going to be moments it's hard, and there's going to be moments that it's, going to send me in all sorts of different directions. But I am here for a reason, clearly. Um, and by like, I think that's the thing. Like, if I could just look at like one step ahead, like someone may be 10 steps ahead, but I just need
Yeah.
to take one more step ahead. That's what the retreat also, I think, really showed me.
Yeah.
Um, because someone who was 10 steps ahead still had similar questions and thoughts and queries, right? So like just keep going one
Absolutely.
step at a time. Um, yeah, the moment of the cold punch for me was without a doubt like the most impactful part of it all, but also just getting to be so poured into, having amazing food, taking care of us for,
Yes.
and like being like, okay. And I came back from that retreat and like my business took the biggest leap it had in the last 9 months, right? And it really like, I was like, cool how you create some space and it'll come back to you. Um,
Yes.
but it was, yeah, a really incredible 3 days of reminding myself again, like, right, like I was just grinding, grinding, grinding. So by
Yeah.
like stopping and being like, okay, I'm going to spend some time for Crystal right now, take care of myself as this
Yep.
business owner, I think it allowed me to then to do more on the other side of it.
Right. And I think even, sharing about like almost like the vulnerability of like asking the questions. Cause I think in that room, everyone what just was looking for help and support. No one was judging. And I think that happens a lot of times. We think people are judging the questions we're asking, the journey that we're on, or that we're not where we think we should be. But just being vulnerable and asking, hey, here's support I'm looking for in my business. Do you have any ideas? Like that goes a long way. And so many people now are thinking about like, I have a question about like balancing motherhood and, being myself, or I have a great event. I think Chris would be a great speaker at like your name is now top of mind because you've now shared, some of the support you're looking for within your own business too.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's the thing, and like things that people we look up to who then like, right, that kind of just like brings everyone down to earth, and like you see that we
Yeah.
all have things that we can contribute and help each other with, and like it was just like, yeah, everyone was just so genuine in that space, which was so wonderful. And we do, I think what the coolest thing is about being in those kind of spaces, like we continue to pour into each other, right? Like in our
Yes.
group chat that we have, right, as I've been like going through like, okay, like I'm trying to make sense of this next phase of my business and what's going to happen with something beyond mom, and as we grow and as we evolve and as we
Yep.
things, being able to like send a message into that group chat, and just even like we poured into each other so much in those 3 days, but we're still now months later wanting to pour into each other and stuff like that, like still helping each other, still showing up. It's like really special.
It is very special, those bonds and those connections that you have from being in the room. So, okay, so you shared that you have an event that you're speaking at coming up. What else is kind of on the horizon for you as far as like speaking, podcast, all the fun things that are going on?
Yeah, it's everything's coming up to 1 year, which is really cool. So it's like the 1 year anniversary of Something Beyond Mom that we're celebrating soon. The 1 year anniversary of the podcast will be in June. So a lot of like celebrations right now, which is really
Yes.
exciting. And then with that comes like, what's the next chapter, right? Like, kind of what do
Yep.
we do in this next chapter? And I think I realized, this winter, like I had mentioned to you just before we hopped online, like I ran 6 events in March.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So
You're
I
a
feel like it's
superstar by all like, oh
like
wow.
every one of my portfolio areas was like, let me have something big this month. Perfect.
Yes.
So now coming out of that, spring is like, right now, here we go.
Yep.
I'm kind of feeling this moment of like, okay, Crystal, let's like pause and reflect and figure out where you want to go. It doesn't need to be
Yes.
that much. Um,
Yes.
and figure out, right? Like the podcast is bi-weekly right now. Does that feel good? Do we take the summer off? Like, what do we do? What do we like? What's the podcast? Like what we're giving, but what we're getting out of it. Something,
Right.
same thing, like, right? Like, what's our next chapter? So I kind of feel like I'm in that kind of moment right now.
Yep.
Mother Telling is my friend Courtney's event, and I'm very honored to be a part of it and be one of her speakers. So I'm really hoping that's something I think I want to definitely keep leaning into is like, after being on the stage at High Vibe, it reminded me like that's why I stepped into entrepreneurship. Like that's
Yes.
really what I initially wanted out of it. That's what brought me to High Vibe. And I think that I love running events, I love bringing people together. Like community is something that every kind of wherever I am, I'm always forming that. Like
Yes.
that kind of comes naturally to me. Um, but yeah, like as Crystal, I think the thing that fulfills me the most is getting the opportunity to facilitate these conversations and lead these conversations. So I do want to put some energy into having those opportunities, look into those opportunities and put myself in more rooms to have those, right? To be
Yes.
people running events and stuff like that, to then see, am I the right fit for their events that I could have some more speaking opportunities. So I'm hoping there's more of that coming because I really do love that.
And you're so good at it and you bring such good topics and conversations because I know sometimes people are always focused on like the strategy and the know-how and all of that when it comes to business, but you're really focusing on like you as a person, like you said, kind of like your talks are life beyond like campus and school, but now it's like life beyond entrepreneurship essentially too, right? And like all the external factors. So yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's my goal. I'm taking care of moms, I'm taking care of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
That's the goal right now.
We appreciate you.
Yeah.
So, oh, okay. So I will be sure to include in the show notes where people can find you. I've got like your website and your socials. So I feel like we could chat forever, but it's been so amazing. For our listeners learning more about you, and I'll make sure to include the podcast as well too, so they can check out the podcast.
Beautiful. It's so great to chat with you, Amy. I love it. I love what you're doing here. I love, and I'm excited to have a business one day that needs all of your wonderful services. So
You're
I'm
so
so
sweet.
excited though for us to continue connecting and having this conversation. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.